Today's video is about God's 4 holy places on earth according to the Book of Jubilees. So in chapter 4, verse 26, the angel of God is narrating and says that God has 4 places on earth, and we're going to get into all of these 4 places. Place number 1. So the first place is the Garden of Eden. Now this was a lot of fun, like a puzzle to figure out, but in the Book of Jubilees it's evident that the Garden of Eden is referring to someplace within the plot of Eden, which is called the land of Eden, in verse 16 of chapter 8. And the land of Eden is Shem's plot within Africa, whereas the Garden of Eden is somewhere in that plot. It seems to be, according to the plot, somewhere in the north of that plot. And since the other 3 in this list are mountains, if we were going to talk about a mountain within the Garden of Eden, then this would undoubtedly be Mount Entoto in Ethiopia. Now, other than the Book of Jubilees referring to the boundaries and the area of Mount Entoto as the Garden of Eden, we also have a supporting verse in the Bible in Genesis 2:8, where the Garden of Eden is referred to as Gan Be'eden Mikedem, a garden of paradise in the east. So here we're referring to the easternmost part of Africa. Some do say that after the flood, everything changed. The waters, the rivers, the names of the rivers were used again in the area of Ararat, where Noah's Ark came to rest in the area of Turkey, Armenia. So we can't look for the Garden of Eden based on the names of rivers. And here it's clear that the Garden of Eden is somewhere in the area of Ethiopia and Shem's lot according to Jubilees, which makes it clear when it's giving the boundaries of the plots that Noah has given to each of the 3 sons according to the lots that they chose out of a lottery, so that they each had their own space and they promised to respect one another's territory. Although in the Book of Jubilees we see that especially Canaan, one of the sons of Ham, does not respect this promise that was solemnly sworn in oath between the children of Noah, and then the children of Noah also subdivided those plots among their own sons, but I digress. It's worth noting that in chapter 8, verse 19, there is a verse that refers to the Garden of Eden as the Holy of Holies, where God dwells. So this apparently is a natural place where God dwells, and we don't know too much else about it, but according to Jubilees, it's in Ethiopia. Number 2. Number 2 is called the Mountain of the East. The Mountain of the East is not clarified. What mountain in the east could this be? And while you could say perhaps this is simply the mountain in Ethiopia, which is in the east of Africa, I would beg to differ. I think that the mountain of the east is referring to the east that Abraham sends his sons to. So in Genesis chapter 25, verse 6, Abraham sends his sons with gifts to the land of the east, eastward to the land of the east. Now around this time is when the stories about Brahma and Shiva and these Hindu gods begin in the Far East, and so many people have tied these together, that Brahma is coming from Abraham, Shiva is coming from Sheva, 7, and the Sabbath, and Brahma has a wife, a female counterpart called Saraswati, which is like Sarah and Sarai, and so there's a lot of overlap here. Anyhow, so when you're looking for the Mountain of the East, if you were to look from a bird's eye view, which is what the view of the angel or God would be most like, then you see what sticks out is the Himalayas. The Himalayas are the most intense mountains of the east. If we were going to say the mountain of the east, we'd be talking about the Himalayas. And Furthermore, among the Himalayas is a very holy mountain called Mount Kailash, which is in Tibet, which is technically part of China today. So I put the Tibetan flag, but it could also be the Chinese flag. And so Mount Kailash, which is considered a very holy mountain for a very long time, perhaps the most sacred mountain in all of the East, is what I would give my educated guess to be the mountain of the East that's referred to. At the very least, the Himalayas would make sense here. And this mountain is held sacred by the Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and Ban. Number 3. All right, number 3 is Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is referred to as the center of the desert. Now, for a long time, Sinai, the mountain, was considered to be in the Sinai Peninsula, although archaeologists never found any evidence that a large group of people passed through there, and we are talking about a large group of people, some 600,000 men, plus the children, the women, and the cattle, and whatever else. So if there was no proof that anyone went through there, people had to look elsewhere. And what has been made clear is that there is a very strong and increasing possibility that Mount Sinai is actually in what today is part of Saudi Arabia, and that is right on the other side of the Red Sea, Gulf of Aqaba. Many people consider Jabal al-Lawz to be one of the best guesses at where it would be. It's got parched black tops where they say perhaps these thunder and lightning came down during the experience at Mount Sinai. There is a giant split rock that would make sense as the split rock of Horeb. It's clear that there was a lot of water around that rock, which makes sense with the story of the rock of Horeb having split open to bring forth lots of water for everybody. There's caves, date palm. Basically, there is absolutely evidence that there were a large amount of people that passed through those areas. There are old hieroglyph drawings of cows and altars that were made out of large rocks that weren't cut with any metal instruments, which is all according to the biblical account of how they were supposed to make their altars. And so a lot more evidence is building up that Mount Sinai is in Arabia, right on the other side of the Red Sea. But because of technicalities, it hasn't been as researched and studied as perhaps it will be, God willing, in the future when there is more peace throughout the land. There is apparently a Bedouin tradition that Jabal al-Lawz is Jabal Musa, the mountain of Moses, and that this is where the story occurred, but I'm not writing the name Jabal al-Lawz down on the icon because I'm not sure. Many people still believe that it is in the Sinai Peninsula where Mount Sinai happened, and people have strong feelings about this one way or the other. Either way, we know it's either in the Sinai Peninsula or right across from the Gulf of Aqaba in today's Saudi Arabia. But like I said, it needs to be further researched and understood, and so that would be it for number 3. Number 4, we're getting to it. It is Mount Zion. Mount Zion is referred to as the navel of the earth, which is the earth's belly button, which is so sweet. And when you see these pictures of the old world, which include Africa, Europe, and Asia, it really is the belly button right there at the center. Mount Zion is the mountain in Jerusalem of Har HaBayit, which is the Temple Mount. And Jerusalem is known as Al-Quds, while the mosque on top of the Temple Mount is known as the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as distinct from the Dome of the Rock. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque has a silver dome, whereas the Dome of the Rock has a golden dome, and the Dome of the Rock is a shrine to the temples that existed in ancient times, both Herod's temple and Solomon's temple. These were both temples in Jerusalem for God, a holy place for God to dwell. And if we go back to that verse in chapter 1, in the last verse, verse 29, it says that the sanctuary of God will be established in Jerusalem on Mount Zion. Then all the luminaries will be renewed for healing, for peace, and for blessing, for all the days of the earth. And in the verse right before that, verse 28, it says that I am the God of Israel, the father of all the children of Jacob, and king on Mount Zion for all eternity. Zion and Jerusalem will be holy. So there's an idea that while the Garden of Eden is God's holy place where God dwells, the mountain on Mount Zion is the place where God tasks the children of Israel with creating a home for God to dwell in, which is an actual building that is described in the Bible and that was attempted in the first and second temples and is still dreamed of as a place of peace and prayer for all nations to gather together in harmony in Jerusalem on Mount Zion. So that is the prophecy and the prayer of Jews. That is their one holy place, one holy mountain of all the Israelites in Israel. And that is Mount Zion number 4. All right, those are God's 4 holy places on earth according to the Book of Jubilees. Thank you for listening. This is Modern Jubilees, and we'll see you next time.